Have you ever noticed how some of the biggest problems, the really impactful ones, aren't always the loudest? They're more like silent invaders, working away behind the scenes, kind of subtly messing with things we really depend on, like, well, our food supply. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something that might not be on your radar, but it has this profound impact on livestock health and actually even public health: bovine chlamydosis. And you, our listener, you've given us this great stack of sources, everything from bovine chlamydosis, a global health challenge, to specific stuff on chlamydosis in
Yeah.
cattle. So
Yeah.
our mission here, to really pull out the key nuggets, unpack this pretty complex issue, and, understand what it all means, giving you that shortcut to being genuinely well informed.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating looking through the material you sent is just how multifaceted this whole thing is. It's so much more than just an animal health problem. It's a major economic burden for sure, and a really significant public health thing too. It perfectly highlights why that one health idea, connecting human, animal, and environmental health is just so vital.
Okay, let's dive right in then. We're talking about an infectious disease in cattle, right? Caused by specific bacteria. Can you sort of walk us through these culprits? What makes them so tricky?
Absolutely. So bovine chlamydosis is caused by these um, obligate intracellular bacteria. Fancy term, but basically means they actually live inside the host cells. Tiny biological spies, if you like. They're from the Chlamydiaceae family. The main ones we worry about in cattle are Chlamydia pecorum, C. abortus, and C. cetacea. And part of what makes them tricky is this unique biphasic developmental cycle. They switch between two forms. There's the elementary body, or EB tough, infectious, floats around outside cells. But once it gets inside a host cell, wham, it changes into the reticulate body, the RB. That's the form that actually reproduces, but it's much more fragile. And, as if that wasn't enough, the way we even classify these things keeps changing. It's dynamic. Historically, chlamydia was even split into two genera, chlamydia and Chlamydophila. Then they merged it back. Plus, new species keep getting found, like Chlamydia gallinaceae, recently identified in cattle. So what does that mean practically? Well, it means our diagnostic tools, our surveillance, they have to constantly adapt.
We might miss new species or struggle to sort out mixed infections where an animal has several types at once. Makes diagnosis a real challenge.
Right. Okay. And here's where it gets like really eye-opening for me from the sources. This isn't some rare thing affecting a few cows here and there. It's incredibly widespread, isn't it? What's the global picture look like?
Oh, it's huge. Globally, we're seeing massive exposure. Seropositivity, basically. Evidence that herds have encountered the bacteria ranges from like 45% to, in some places, 100%. It means most cattle populations on Earth have been exposed. For C. pecorum specifically, you might see lower rates, say 0.7 to maybe 9% in Europe, 7.5% in the US. But then you look at China, and it jumps to 57%. And interestingly, we often see higher rates in younger animals, calves, heifers, like 58.5% in calves, 39% in heifers in one U.S. study. So it's hitting the young ones hard too. And how does it spread? Well, pretty much any way you can imagine. The bacteria are shed in almost all body fluids: vaginal, eye, nasal secretion, semen, urine. But fecal shedding is probably the biggest deal for contaminating the environment. Animals usually pick it up by, ingesting or inhaling contaminated stuff. Venereal spread is possible, and aborted fetuses or placentas are a major source of infection too. One interesting point: direct vertical transmission, like from the mother cow to the calf in utero, hasn't really been reported definitively. The patterns vary too. Like, you're more likely to find C. cetacea and C. abortus in vaginal swabs, while C. pecorum often shows up more in fecal samples. And crucially, mixed infections are common. An animal having more than one chlamydia species at the same time complicates things, obviously. And whether an infection actually makes the animal sick, well, that depends on lots of things: environment, housing, climate, hygiene, other diseases. All these factors can push an asymptomatic carrier into showing actual symptoms. Stress is a big trigger.
Okay, so we've got this widespread kind of sneaky bacteria. How does it actually impact the animals? When we talk clinical manifestations, what are we actually seeing on the farm?
Right, the impact. It's a really wide spectrum. You can get severe, acute disease that's obvious, or these much more common, pervasive subclinical forms that just sort of drag performance down without being dramatic. It can hit multiple organ systems: gut, lungs, nervous system, joints, even the urinary system. Often at autopsy, you see this characteristic fibrinous inflammation, a sign of pretty severe infection. Let's dig into some specifics. Reproductive problems are a huge one. A major cause of abortion, typically late term, often with no warning signs at all. Also stillbirths, infertility, lower milk production, even complete sterility, especially linked to C. abortus. You might also see retained placentas, metritis, that's uterine inflammation. In bulls, it can cause vesiculitis. inflammation of seminal vesicles, and the bacteria can actually bind to sperm, so direct impact on fertility. Fetal infection can happen really early, like within 6 days of the mother being infected. The damage to the fetus varies depending on when it happens. You might see fluid buildup, tiny hemorrhages, swollen livers. Then there's sporadic bovine encephalomyelitis, or SBE. This is really serious, mainly caused by cepacorum, usually hitting calves under 6 months. Starts vaguely high fever, they go off feed, maybe some diarrhea, but then it can rapidly turn neurological. Stiffness, knuckling over the joints, loss of tail tone, staggering, circling. Eventually, they often go down maybe with that severe neck arching called opisthodynos. SBE is basically a systemic infection causing widespread blood vessel damage. Brain, liver, spleen lesions everywhere. You also often see polyceratitis inflammation lining the chest, abdomen, around the heart, SBE. Mortality is high, often over 50% if you don't treat it aggressively. You can also see polyarthritis, so fever, lameness, swollen, painful joints, stiff walk. It's actually more common in lambs, but you see it occasionally in calves, sometimes alongside pink eye, and other things too, conjunctivitis, that's the pink eye media, pneumonia, enteritis causing diarrhea, sometimes bloody, especially in young calves, hepatitis, chronic mastitis. Sometimes it's just general lethargy, dullness, maybe some nasal or eye discharge. And critically, something often missed is reduced growth rates.
One study you sent mentioned up to a 48% reduction in affected calves. Imagine that economic hit, just massive. How does it cause all this? Well, that EBRB cycle lets it hide and multiply inside cells. But a key damaging effect, especially in SBE, is on blood vessels, systemic vasculitis. But like we said, whether it becomes full-blown disease isn't just about the bug, it's multifactorial. Environment, housing, stress, other infections, they all play a role in tipping an asymptomatic carrier over the edge.
Okay, wow. With such a huge range of symptoms, some really subtle, getting an accurate diagnosis sounds like a massive puzzle. How do vets actually figure out if an animal has bovine chlamydiosis?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's complex. No single typical picture. It's multiple organs. And that intermittent shedding we talked about makes it easy to get false negatives if you sample at the wrong time. So for diagnosis, collecting the right sample is job one. Depends what you suspect. Nasal swabs, eye swabs, rectal, vaginal, maybe tracheal washes, biopsies, blood, organ tissues, joint fluid. In abortion cases, the fetus and placenta are absolutely vital samples. Then, molecular methods like PCR, especially qPCR, are often the first choice. They're very sensitive, very specific for detecting the bacterial DNA. qPCR is great because it can quantify how much is there and tell you the species. Big caveat though, PCR finds DNA. It doesn't tell you if the bacteria were alive and kicking or just dead remnants. So positive PCR needs context. Clinical signs are key. Then you've got serology blood tests like ELISA, IF, CFT. These look for antibodies, showing the animal's immune system has reacted to chlamydia at some point. ELISA is common, it's pretty quick and sensitive, but challenges exist. Cross-reactivity between species can muddy the waters. You can't tell an active infection from an old one just from antibodies. Calves might have maternal antibodies from colostrum confusing things, and in very acute cases, the animal might not have made antibodies yet, giving a false negative. Culture is definitive, actually growing the bacteria. But it's slow, takes days or weeks, and needs special cell culture because they're obligate intracellular, not routine for most labs. You can do antigen detection or staining on tissues, which confirms chlamydia is present, but often doesn't tell you the species. And finally, histopathology, looking at tissues under a microscope and post-mortem exams are really crucial, especially if an animal dies, to confirm the disease and be sure chlamydia was the cause.
Right, navigating that maze sounds intense. So if you do get a diagnosis confirmed, what's the game plan? How do you treat these animals? And maybe more importantly, how do you stop this silent spreader in its tracks?
Treatment usually relies on tetracycline antibiotics. Oxytetracycline is common. For severe stuff like SBE, you need to hit it early in high doses and keep treating for several weeks, even after they look better, to really clear it. Other antibiotics like tylosin are sometimes used, and if there's metritis, systemic drugs like Naxil or Polyflex might come into play. But, and this is a huge but, antimicrobial resistance is a major growing concern. We've seen Chlamydosis, a pig strain, actually pick up tetracycline resistance. It really hammers home the need for responsible antibiotic use. Proper dosing, finishing the course, respecting withdrawal times before meat or milk goes to market. Essential. This concern is also fueling the search for alternatives, like using dextrose solution for uterine infections. Some studies show it works about as well as antibiotics for mild cases. That's promising, especially for, say, organic farms. And don't forget supportive care for really sick animals. Fluids, maybe hyperimmune serum, keeping them clean, fed, watered, turning them if they're down. It's all part of good management, alongside improving housing and hygiene.
That's a perfect segue. Moving from the individual cow to protecting the whole herd. What are the bedrock strategies for prevention and control? Because prevention seems key with something this sneaky.
Totally. Biosecurity is absolutely foundational. Number one, starts with where you buy animals. Get them from healthy herds, maybe focus on younger animals with less potential exposure history. Then quarantine, strict isolation for any new animals or ones returning from shows or grazing elsewhere. 21 to 30 days is recommended. Separate gear, separate routines for feeding and handling them. I know it takes time and effort, but it's so worth it. Controlling movement onto the farm is vital to people. Vehicles, equipment. Keep it minimal and controlled. And sanitation, hygiene, meticulous disinfection, washing boots, changing clothes between areas. Sounds basic, but it's critical. Avoid contaminating feed and water sources. Pest control helps too, reducing potential vectors. Honestly, having a written biosecurity plan for the specific farm. Highly recommended. Beyond just keeping bugs out, good overall herd health management is key. Optimizing nutrition, breeding, housing, general husbandry. Basically minimizing stress. Stress lowers immunity. Also, identifying and maybe removing those reservoir animals, the chronic shedders that don't look sick but keep pumping out bacteria that's part of long-term control. It all helps build the herd's collective resilience. Now, vaccination. It's complicated and still evolving. Right now, there aren't any specific vaccines for SBE in cattle. For sheep, there are live C. abortus vaccines against abortion, but there are some safety worries about whether they're fully attenuated, meaning weakened. Inactivated sheep vaccines exist, but they might not stop shedding completely. For cattle, there's a commercial inactivated vaccine, Salamivax, targeting C. abortus, mostly aimed at those subclinical effects. Studies show it can help, like lowering somatic cell counts in milk, boosting antibodies, but it hasn't consistently stopped shedding in milk, and results can vary by region. Look, vaccine development for chlamydia has been going on for like 70 years. It's tough. You've got host differences, the bacteria are complex antigenically, making wholesale vaccines often too expensive. Safety is a concern with live vaccines. And getting complete protection, stopping shedding, has been really elusive. Vaccinated carriers are a problem. But also, recent work is promising. People are looking at recombinant vaccines, peptide vaccines. There's work in koalas with C. pecorum that might be relevant. New approaches like outer membrane complex vaccines, COMC vaccines, they're showing good results in sheep, reducing shedding, improving lamb weights. Research is also targeting specific proteins like MOMP or POMP90 fragments, trying to find the key to unlock a better immune response. There's even talk of therapeutic vaccination, using vaccines to maybe help animals already infected. Still early days for some of this, but moving forward.
Okay, so it hits the animals hard, difficult to diagnose, treat, prevent, but it doesn't stop there, does it? This has real economic teeth, and that human dimension you mentioned earlier. Let's talk costs, the obvious and the hidden.
Yeah. The economic hit is substantial. Direct production losses are clear. Those reduced growth rates we mentioned, up to 48% in some studies, that's huge potential profit just gone. Decreased milk yields, another big one. One source quoted, nearly 500 kilograms less milk per lactation, plus chronic mastitis impacting milk quality. Then infertility and reproductive issues, cows not getting pregnant easily, needing more inseminations, longer gaps between calves. Your sources highlighted reproductive issues costing the U.S. cattle industry around $1 billion annually. That's massive. Abortion and stillbirths are devastating losses. The cost per aborted cow was estimated at 630 pounds in one source. And outbreaks can see abortion rates hitting 20%, plus mortality from severe disease like SBE, over 50%. You also lose potential lactations over a cow's lifetime, lose calves around birth time. And on top of all that, you've got the direct costs of vet visits, treatments, vaccines, prevention programs. It all adds up. But what's often missed, and potentially even bigger overall, are those hidden costs from the widespread subclinical infections. The ones not causing obvious drama. These just quietly erode productivity. Partly slower growth, bit less milk, slightly lower fertility. It's a constant drag that adds up to a massive cumulative burden. It's why the disease's true economic impact is probably frequently underestimated.
And the human side. That one health angle you brought up. These aren't just cattle problems. They can jump to us. What's the risk there?
Yep. Exactly. The zoonotic risk is real and serious. Chlamydia abortus is well known for this. Yes, it's famous for sheep abortion, but it infects cattle too and is linked to abortion and severe reproductive issues in humans. For pregnant women, it's particularly dangerous. It can cause a life-threatening systemic illness, this condition called DIC, where blood clots form everywhere, kidney and liver failure, and tragically, stillbirth or miscarriage. Chlamydosis is another known zoonotic agent. Causes psittacosis or parrot fever in people. We usually think of birds, but it definitely infects mammals, including cattle. Human psittacosis often looks like atypical pneumonia, but can get really serious endocarditis, hepatitis, neurological issues. As for C. pecorum, it has been found in humans, but its role in causing human disease isn't really clear yet. More research needed there. How do people get it? mostly by inhaling contaminated aerosols or dust. Think infected placenta, uterine discharge, dried feces, respiratory secretions getting airborne. Direct contact with infected animals or tissues, or contaminated clothing and boots are also roads. So occupational groups are at higher risk. Farmers, vets, slaughterhouse workers, maybe even pet shop or poultry workers if causative is involved.
Sure.
For C. abortus, handling lambing ewes indoors, especially if there are abortions, is a key risk period. This leads to clear public health advice. Pregnant women, strongly advised to avoid contact with aborting sheep, newborn lambs, afterbirth, and those live sheep vaccines. If they get flu-like symptoms after being on a farm, seek medical help immediately. Basic hygiene is crucial for everyone. Hand washing, washing contaminated clothes and boots separately. Awareness and education are key. And for those working in high-risk jobs, strict biosecurity, using personal protective equipment, PPE, safe handling practices, non-negotiable really.
Definitely a moving target, so complex, but good to hear research is pushing forward. What are the latest breakthroughs? Where are things heading in the fight against bovine chlamydosis?
Yeah, there's definitely progress. A lot more focus now on really understanding the basics. Sources, genetics, how prevalent it is, how the disease actually presents, how it spreads. Genomics, whole genome sequencing, bioinformatics. These tools are giving us much better ways to type strains, track outbreaks, understand how the bacteria evolve. This feeds into better diagnostics, more sensitive, more specific tests. We're also getting better at creating models, like in vivo calf models, to study how the disease actually works in the animal and how the immune system responds. And research is even looking beyond the main chlamydia species, investigating chlamydia-like organisms, CLOs, and their potential role in cattle reproductive problems. The picture might be even broader. But challenges remain, for sure. Diagnostic accuracy is still tricky, differentiating species sometimes, telling live from dead bacteria, standardizing tests across labs. Vaccine development, as we discussed, is complex. Getting vaccines that work well across species, reduce shedding effectively, and translating results from model to real-world protection isn't easy. The economic impact of subclinical disease needs way more recognition. We need more solid data on treatment efficacy, especially non-antibiotic options. And there are still gaps in understanding transmission dynamics and risk factors in different farming systems. So, future directions. Continued work on advanced diagnostics, maybe multiplex PCRs to detect several things at once, better antibody tests. Novel vaccines are a huge focus, aiming for broad protection, reduce shedding, using things like recombinant proteins, COMCs, maybe new ways to deliver vaccines. More research into alternatives to antibiotics, like that dextrose example. Deeper dives into epidemiology and pathogenesis, understanding risk factors, transmission routes, the true cost of subclinical disease, how host genetics can influence susceptibility. And underpinning all of this is strengthening those One Health strategies. We need integrated surveillance, better collaboration between vets, researchers, farmers, public health folks, everyone talking to each other. That's critical.
Wow. That was genuinely a deep dive, uncovering just layers upon layers from microscopic bacteria right up to global economics and, well, our own health. You came here wanting to be well-informed, and I really think we've gone way beyond that thanks to the sources you provided. Just fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. And if you think about the bigger picture, the way this disease, bovine chlamydosis, is so pervasive, but often silent, it really underscores why being proactive, having integrated strategies, is so much better than just reacting when things go wrong. It's a real testament to how interconnected everything is: animal health, human health, the environment.
Totally agree. And it leaves us with a thought, doesn't it? If a disease most people haven't even heard of can have such a profound, often underestimated impact, well, what other silent challenges might be out there just below the surface, affecting things in ways we haven't even realized yet? What stands out most to you from this deep dive? What might you want to explore next? Thank you again for providing these fantastic sources and for joining us on the deep dive.